Which we have right now. I would like to inform you that this interview will be published on the website of Fublis. So you can sign up to the Fublis website and then you'll get the access to watch this interview.
Thank you. Okay.
Shall we proceed with the questions, Yasmine?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, what path did you take that eventually led you to become an architectural content writer at Parametric Architecture?
Okay. So originally, I have studied architecture in university, but I think I have always been, even during my studies, I've always been drawn to the, academic, let's say, more research based parts of architecture. Of course, I was in love with design and the whole concept behind it, but I was always seeking those kind of places, and I was always curious if it's ever possible to find a chance like that. And I mean, I graduated post COVID or in the middle of COVID, So that made me take certain decisions that took me in different directions. And I found gigs in content writing. I trained in SEO writing. Actually, I wrote on so many topics, but you caught my architectural writing. Yeah. I mean, at first I trained in writing about crypto, blockchain, and that kind of technology. And you can say that's the path that I kind of took. And it was just happening one time after the other. And I had that experience. And I was having some little design on the side. But then suddenly I found this job and I was like, it combines kind of my interests. Let's try it. And that's how I ended up actually doing it.
Well, that's great. So, my next question for you is that how do you blend your architectural expertise with your writing for parametric architecture?
The architectural expertise helps me in any topic that I can write about, not necessarily for this specific platform, because in architecture, you learn steps. You have a process, you have something you need to go through, and that kind of becomes your way of doing things. So anything in the way we learned, you need to go to the source. You need to understand why it's going on. And I believe that this is a very perfect meeting point between, or let's say content writing for the audience. There is a really, really interesting intersection point that I have been lucky enough to explore in different topics. And it really becomes more clear when you're jumping from topic to topic and you're like, oh, I am using the same method.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So my next question for you is, what sparked your passion? Okay, now you told me the story that how you became an content writer, but now I want to know that what sparked your passion for exploring the relationship between architecture, technology, and human experience?
Yes, this is my favorite question because technology, this is how I happened upon technology. I've explained it at the beginning, but human experience and the philosophical, psychological aspects of architecture is what got me into architecture in the first place. So, this is how I chose it as a major. I'm always interested in blending interdisciplinary connections with architecture. Like, I'm interested in exploring and showing that it's a little something beyond the engineering or the building part of it. I believe there are brilliant people out there showcasing that. So, this is where my interest comes, that you can say it is more literature, like more human centered. So this is how it came to a blend, and how I could fuse that with technology. It's a really interesting realm to explore.
Very, very interesting answer. Okay, next question for you is, and the edited one. Can you share your process for delving into biophilic design into your articles?
Yes. Well, whenever you want to talk about like a keyword like that, biophilic design, what is biophilic design? You are writing sometimes for people who know it and sometimes for people who do not know it. So whenever I get encountered with a topic like that, I try to write for both people reading, and I try to encourage like people who will hear it for the first time. And I know there are people who study and who are designers in biophilic design, which is briefly, related to nature and, incorporating architecture like that. So I try to give like something different, like a story included in it, like what you focus on. Is it just about the trees, you know, in buildings, or is it something beyond? So my process, my approach to that is always, I try to search for the stories. I try to make someone who isn't familiar with it find something that would, so when someone gets interested in it, they can, you know, continue their research, like, you know, scientific kind of research and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, a very interesting. Moving to the next question, how do you keep up with the latest advancement in AI tools for urban planning as highlighted in your recent article?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, I'm gonna give you a funny answer. You know, it's really easy to keep up with these tools when you're on Twitter, and now it's called X, but I'll always call it Twitter. I don't know. So you can always find the latest updates over there. And of course, there's the traditional way of keeping up with pages that keep up with these things, but I find it really fun to hunt them down. You know, like just keep searching on Twitter, who's trending, what's going on, you know, keywords. It's very important to type keywords. Like, even it's a very, very basic trick. Just put it in the search engine, let it take you wild, and you find things that you wouldn't imagine that you would find. And then, you
Even we
know,
use these techniques, those
exactly. And then you
keywords.
go down the rabbit hole and you discover things so from something, and it was just a little keyword, you know.
Well, what challenges do you face when simplifying complex architectural ideas for a broad and a diverse audience?
Yes, it's a
Of
very
course, there
big
must be a lot
challenge.
of challenges in your work.
Lots of challenges indeed. Because at first, when I was studying architecture, you were talking with a bunch of students who are like you know, studying architecture, and your doctors, they know way more. So you were speaking the language, you know, there's the whole vibe. And then when you start writing to an audience, it's not necessarily architects anymore, not necessarily designers, not necessarily someone who knows the industry. So your responsibility is to make it as relatable as possible, as simple as possible. So I always face that challenge. Like, I try to avoid using like lexicon big words or like things, keywords that are hard, but at the same time, I want to introduce them, you know? So this is one of the challenges that I face. Or sometimes when you want to talk about something, you can talk about it like really well, like in a very nice philosophical way, but then you have to be like, wait, like you can't be that niche, you know, in your audience. So this is one of my biggest challenges that I try to overcome, like stop overcomplicating things, but at the same time, like don't make them too simple. You know, like because some readers will get bored and say like this is a little too simple for me, you know? So I try to actually I use this method. I have some friends who didn't study architecture or something. I write something and I say, "Hey, read it. Do you get it?" And when they gave me the approval, like I got your idea or I got your message, I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track. And it's very important, I think, to get the
Yeah.
perspective of someone who
Yes.
isn't in it. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing you can do about any topic. Like, if you're into fashion and you are so into it, you know all the little details about it, ask someone who doesn't care about fashion. Like, I'm serious. You'll get amazing insights.
Exactly. Okay, moving to the next question, Yasmin. Can you walk us through your research process for a piece like evolution of the Mobius concept in architecture?
Yes. So when you come across like a topic like that, and it sounds so weird and intimidating, and why is it Mobius, and is it how do you spell it? I think that the best way to handle, or my process, let's say, I love to go back to the source. Like, you can start the article talking about architecture and the concept itself, explaining it. But for example, in that article, I started it writing about what is Mobius concept, and it's originally in mathematics. So at first, I like to explain like where did it come from, who invented it, you know, which year, explain the mathematic equation, explain the shape, the sphere, give it, you know, like building blocks. And then my second part is to understand its origin in architecture. Who first made something like that? You know, you start like building up slowly, slowly. And so this is how you make someone familiar with it. Like when you introduced it as a concept in mathematics, you know, and you can find diagrams that some people really explain like mathematic equations in a really nice way. And then the article links with architecture, and then the reader will be like, oh, okay, I can relate to it now. I get it. And then you can add a layer of philosophical, like, it's an endless journey, and then they can relate the shape with the words. So I believe it's about building, slowly. That was my approach in topics like this. And
Great,
yeah.
great answer. Okay, moving to the next question. How do you see storytelling contributing to a deeper public appreciation of architectural design?
Yeah. I mean, I believe in storytelling so much. Like, I'm in love with storytelling. I've been in love with storytelling since I was a little girl. It was my favorite thing to do. Just sneak to the library during recess and just read books and weird stories. So I think a lot of us love storytelling. And I think that we're at a point in time, like most people, when I speak about architecture, they're like, what? Isn't it just engineering and builders? Like, what are you talking? Storytelling? What are you going to tell the story of concrete? Like some people give you really nice answers. And so I really believe that there is a void maybe in the public eye to understand storytelling and architecture. Like, how can a space tell you a story? I believe that would make someone more in connection with their environment, especially in public spaces. Apart from, private homes or whatever, or museums or whatever. But like in public spaces, when you create these amazing journeys, like I want to mention the greatest, in my opinion, architect, Tadao Ando, the way he plays with architecture, a little wall here, water, shaping your experience. I believe it really makes you, as a person experiencing the space, who didn't study the principles of this space, appreciate it more, have some kind of introspection. So I believe it's very, very important to highlight it in these ways, and yeah, of course, architecture, a major part of it is scientific and building and material science and now all this technology. But I believe someone out there should be pushing a little bit towards, the narrative of space.
Great, very well said. Okay, my next question for you, Yasmin, is what are your thoughts on how 3D printing might shape the future of residential architecture based on the insights into 3D printed homes?
Yes. Well, I mean, 3D printing is a very interesting thing that actually started in around 2014 in China. And now it has become so massive that as of recent, I think this year, they opened the first 3D printed neighborhood, and that took 2 years, a whole neighborhood. Can you imagine? So it is cutting down on labor, it is cutting down on time, it's cutting down on materials, it's being sustainable, you're building really fast. This is gonna change the world. But unfortunately, there are places in the world that need it a lot. There are so many displaced people, and, even after the wars, people from crisis. I believe this is a great solution. And for the future, when it's gonna be adopted, like, for those who need. And by the way, there are people and projects and organizations who are doing it for communities. And that's brilliant, I believe.
And I think in future it will do wonders.
Definitely. I mean, it is doing already, by the way, but it's a very small scale. It's not that big yet, I believe. Like, let's say third world countries, because I come from Lebanon. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, okay. Shall we move to the next question and our very last question? Okay. So, are there any upcoming projects or topics that you're particularly excited to explore in your writing?
Yes, of course. Well, I feel like I will always enjoy writing about technology. I still write about purely technology from one time to another. But recently, I am exploring something of my own. I'm going to be publishing articles of my own on my own platform that is more into the psychological and public space and philosophical parts of architecture, which I have been talking about all this time, because I believe that it's very interesting, when you highlight that. Some people are interested and some people don't realize. So it's just like, I feel like it's just like talking about a really nice movie, and then suddenly you're talking about the spaces in that movie and you change someone's life and he's like, what? I didn't see that. Yeah, I'm interested in discovering those areas more, a little more deeper, a little more philosophical.
Yes, and that was amazing. Thank you, Yasmin. It's been a great time, and it was a pleasure to take your interview here. And do not forget to sign up to the Fublis website.